All right. What the? So, making a video here. This is primarily for Joe. Anyway, I found this cool app online, so I don't have to use my busted TI-80, whatever it is, TI-83, I guess. But I think Joe has a TI-84 Plus. Either way, it's extremely similar to this. There's a cool website that apparently lets me just use a calculator. You don't even have to sign up or anything. So here you go. Awesome, right? So let's see. I gave myself some little notes here. For what to cover. So here goes. First thing, well, an obvious thing, I guess, first of all, is you usually have two. There's all these buttons you can press, right? If you just want to do 8 plus 5, that's obvious stuff. If you want to take, like, say, log of 1,000, you can do that. Usually you close these parentheses off, but you don't have to. So, like, here's log base 10 of 1,000. Here's natural log of 2. If it's obvious that there would be, if you just hit enter right now, it'll evaluate this with no issue. You don't have to close these things if you're just being lazy. Now, other buttons, like here's 10 to the power, or like if you want to take a square root, you're gonna hit second first, then hit that button. So I don't know. Sometimes people describe that as like second square root, or they might just forget to say it at all. So square root, now I can enter a number. It should evaluate that. If I wanted e to some power, like e to the 5th, it'll do second, then hit this button, because you can see that in blue it's got the e to the x thing. This is all pretty easy. This is not even, I was going to skip over that stuff, but if you want to use pi for something, you can just, it's right there, second pi. All right. So say you want sine of something. First of all, if we do sine of pi, it's going to give us 0, which tells us this is already in radians. But if you do like sine of 90, that's probably going to be not what you wanted, right? Because this is degrees, and we can already see it's in radian mode. So if I hit sine 90, it's evaluating 90 in radians. It's dividing this by pi, and it's anyway. If you did want it in degrees, that's when you hit the first thing we were talking about. It would be mode. It's sort of like your settings button. Just general stuff that you want to change, it's probably under mode. So I'm going to just click this mode. And normal notation is what it's in right now, but if you wanted, you could hit like scientific notation, and it'll express everything in terms of like scientific notation. So e means times 10 to some power. So this is saying 5 plus 6 is 1.1 times 10. So it's shifting the decimal point one place and giving you 11 as an answer. So that's scientific notation. If you want it, it's there, but probably we're just going to be in normal notation most of the time. You can also control the number of decimal places. So say you wanted everything to be in 3 decimal places, no matter what. You can, now I can do like 5 plus 2, and it's 7, right? No, it's 7.000, because I insisted on there being 3 decimal places. Right? Kind of weird, but you could do that if you wanted to. So let's put that back under float, and now it'll just, it'll be normal again. It won't give you more accuracy if you don't need it. And here you wouldn't need to specify the zeros, right? All right, let's go back to mode. Suppose this is probably the last. Well, I have one more thing to say about this, but this is probably the only reason you'll use mode, is that you were in radians and maybe you wanted it in degrees. So you go to mode, arrow over to degree, hit enter, and it should highlight the mode that it's in. Then you can clear or quit to get back to the main screen. And now when I do sine 90, it's going to give you what you had expected. So if you're thinking of a 90-degree angle, sine of that angle would be 1. Of course, now if I do sine of pi, it's going to be wrong, right? Sine of pi in degree mode is not going to be 1 anymore because it's not in radians. Anyway, normally you'd be in radians, but I can understand like if you're doing sort of basic trig questions, or if you're doing like maybe engineering, a lot of the time they'll be in degree mode instead. But usually if you're in a math class, trig is just a little more elegant if you're in radians, if you think of everything in terms of 2 pi. There's only one other thing that we're going to mess with here, and I'm not going to actually show you much of this, but this thing, function, parametric mode, polar mode, I've never actually used sequential mode sequences, but these three could be useful to you if you if you're in a multivariable calc class, or even just second semester calc class. You'll start to talk about parametric mode and polar mode. So before I go there, let's look real quick. At some point soon, we're going to be talking about plotting stuff, right? Graphing stuff. And you go to y equals and you punch in, normally you just punch a function in here. Say 3, if you want a variable x, it's usually this button. So 3x plus 2, say, or 3x plus 5, something like that, right? And then we'll be able to hit the graph button and it'll plot. It'll give us a continuous graph of this function that we put in, right? This is what this is for. Right now it's in function mode, meaning when you hit y equals, it's going to have y as a function of x, and that's kind of what you're used to, and this is what you'll use like 99% of the time, right? But if you happen to be, there's other ways to talk about functions. One of them is parametric mode. What that means is you'll have an x parameter and a y parameter, and this time now the variable will be t instead. So now when I go to y equals, look what it just did, right? Here's your whole first equation. It's really a system of 2 equations, and they depend on the variable t. So I could do like 5t, and in the y parameter, we have a separate thing. We could have like 10t. And when I go to plot this, what it means is over time, y is going to always be 2 times x. So when I plot it, I wouldn't be surprised if you just see something of a line of slope 2, effectively. Okay, we don't need to go any further on parametric mode, but that's what it's doing. That's parametric plotting, and that's how you would do it on a calculator like this. Another one is polar coordinates, and what that means is everything's like a circle. Polar coordinates, the variable there is theta, an angle, and you're supplying a formula for the radius of the thing that you want to plot. So suppose we had just a radius that was constantly 1. That would be a unit circle, and it would look, over time. I mean, I'm going to hit the graph button so you can see what it looks like. But theta starts at 0, moving to the right, and then it moves counterclockwise, just like you normally do with triangles and stuff. So like a 90-degree angle is pointing straight up. So you go from 0 to 360. Or from 0 to 2 pi, depending on your point of view, if you're in radians or degrees. But suppose our radius was never changing. It didn't really depend on theta. It was just 1. When you plot it, it's going to give you a circle. I know that looks kind of screwy, but that's just because the dimensions of this are not actually a square. That is supposed to be a circle. We can zoom in. It doesn't look any better, but you get the idea. This is a circle of radius 1. We could change it to 2, and your circle would become a circle of radius 2. Okay? And just for funsies, what if we made it theta, the angle theta? You'd get a spiral. So like here at the beginning, well, I don't know why I'm telling you all this stuff. If you'll learn this in a math class if it becomes relevant, but it's normally something you'd probably see in Calc 2. So at angle 0, moving to the right, we have radius 0. At angle 90, we have a radius 90. All right, so it's going from 0 to 360. Actually, what it's probably doing, it's in radians. I wonder if this will change immediately. Yep, it got huge. See that? So I put it in degrees, and now it's like, if you're straight up, it's giving you 90 before you even see that. So that's why we're not seeing it on this screen, because the window only goes up to 10. But we'll talk about that in a sec. So never mind. Let's get out of this. That was parametric and polar coordinates. But you're probably not going to mess with that. You're going to be in function mode almost all the time. So it looks like it saved what I had printed there for my function. All right. So that's radian, scientific notation, parametric and polar coordinates. All right. Let's talk about lists. There's a button here, stat and list. If you hit stat, probably what you'll do a lot is you hit edit. And I'm now editing a list. You can have a bunch of lists. I don't even know how many. Can you have like 10 lists? All right, you can get 6 off the bat, but I wouldn't be surprised if you can add more than that. If it was filled up, it might let you, I'm not sure. But anyway, we've got a list here, right? I can punch numbers in, 4, 5, 10, all right? So there's my list. Let's get out of here again. Quit to get back to the main screen. Second, quit to get back to the main screen whenever you're... So now if I hit stat again and I edit it, it's still there. That's list 1. Okay? You can, one thing you do with lists, sometimes you'll do basic statistics with lists. And if you have something in list 1, right? First of all, before I do anything, if I hit second list, right? Second stat, it'll bring up the list options. And you can do stuff with them. Like you can sort them. I don't even really know what all these things do. You can do math on them, like you can do operations like find me the minimum of the list, find me the max, find me the mean or the median, the sum of all the elements, things like that, right? So that's stuff you can do with a list. But also here in the list, let me show you this again. If you hit second stat, that's the list function. And one thing it does is it tells you a list of the names. Now these other ones are empty, so there's no point for me. Like if I hit L2 and I hit enter, it's going to be like, there's nothing there, it has no dimension, I don't know what you're talking about. Okay, so that's my mistake because there's nothing even in L2. But in L1 we had 4 elements that we put in, right? So if I go second, hit the stat button to pull up the list function, you've got some names of the various lists. So if you just enter L1 back on the home screen, what it's going to do is print them for you. Let's hit enter. It's like, here's your list, baby. Right? And so we could do some stuff like, what's the minimum of... Let's see if it gives me an error. If I just hit min, it'll be like, what are you talking about? Min of what? I wonder what go-to is going to do. Yeah, it's saying like explicitly, minimum of what? So let's put L1 in there. And then hit enter. And it says, oh, okay, minimum of list 1 is 2. So you can do operations on the lists. If you don't do anything, you just enter the name, it'll tell you, it'll spit out the list itself. Let's go back to stat. If you wanted to, so like mine's, I guess I did mine in order. If you wanted to, you could sort descending or sort ascending. I think it's already sort ascending. So if I say sort D and I say L1, now if I go back, I wouldn't be surprised if it's in a different order. So you don't have to like enter them in order. You can hit the sort operation to do that for you. What else we got? I guess that's about it. The other thing I wanted to show you was, let's go to stat. Here's of course where you edit your list, right? If I wanted to add another entry here, I could put one there, right? And it's no longer in order, of course, because I just tacked this on. But yeah, let's hit stat again. If you get a little heavier duty with statistics, you can do z-tests and t-tests right here. You can do linear regression, which I'm not going to talk about right now. But you can do all sorts of regression analysis stuff. But what you'll probably use if you're first getting into this stuff is the 1var stats. Like suppose, here's our list again. Suppose you want to know like what's the mean of this list or what's the median or whatever. We can do those one at a time. We can go list and we can go to math and we can pull up like tell me the mean of, that's not what I meant to do. Sorry, let's get out of here. Let's try that again. tell me the mean of L1, you know? And it'll do that for you. But if you want to get like a bunch of statistics about list 1, you can also just, oops, I did it wrong. You can also just hit stat and then hit 1var stats. You go to stat, let's try that again. You hit stat and you go over to calc and you just hit enter, or you press 1 to do the first option. Oh, that's funny. It's actually asking. Okay, on my calculator, on a TI-83, it won't even ask. It'll just default to doing list 1. But here you go. Here's your mean. Here's your sum. Here's the sum of the squares of those elements. It's telling you there's 5 elements. Here's the minimum. It's giving you quartiles. So it gives you like all the basic statistics that you might want to see. That's a curious comment. It has distributions, but I haven't used these in a while. Usually there's a parameter here. This is more statistics stuff, a little bit more advanced. Usually what you'll do is you'll enter a number here and it'll give you a, like say I put in 0, I would expect it to give me, yeah, anyway, I'm going to get out of this, but if we were talking about like statistics, there's also a distribution button here if you want to pull up normal probability density functions or normal cumulative density functions. So like if we went halfway, I would expect that to be 50. Yeah, that's 50%. I don't know why there's a rounding error there, but this is telling you half of the area under the curve of a bell curve, you know. Anyway, we don't need to know about that. If you get into statistics, it can be useful for that too. I think that's all I wanted to say about stat. We'll come back to lists in a minute, but I'm going to go back to, I'm just going to move on and quickly talk about pretty much everything I know about TI-83 is the graphing stuff up top. And you do use all of these buttons for various stuff involving graphing, but it's not really that complicated. Whoa, what have I done? Let's start over. I hit the space bar. So yeah, here's our default mode. We're in radians, we're in functional notation. Am I moving on? No, I wanted to say one. That's everything I wanted to say about lists. But before I move on, I want to talk about matrices. There is a good chance that you play with a matrix at some point. It's here. It's the second option, right? So you hit second, and then this X inverse button, it'll give you the matrix function. So let's hit that. And these are the names of them. So if you want to refer to one back on the home screen, you just hit that button. But right now, if I hit enter, it's going to be like, what are you talking about, right? Because I didn't define one. So let's go back. Second matrix. These are various functions that I don't know. I don't quite remember what fill does or dimension. I mean, dimension probably gives you the dimensions. Maybe I could make an identity matrix if I hit 5 and I enter a number. Yep, that's what it did. So anyway, various computations that are possible that relate to matrices are here under the math button. These are the names. You can use them to refer to it on the home screen. But what we're going to do is go over to edit and pick one. Let's pick A. And the first thing you do is throw in the dimensions. I'm going to go ahead and make this guy invertible just to show you the one thing I wanted to show you. So let's put some numbers in here for this matrix, like 1, 5, 3. That can stay 0 for all I care. Or, yeah, that's fine. Right? And then let's quit. We're back on the home screen. And actually, if you hit alpha A, nope. Okay, I was just checking. I think to be a matrix, it needs to be in brackets, which we're not going to get into. But just hit second matrix, And then if you hit enter, it'll pull up, or you hit 1, it'll pull up a reference to this first matrix. It'll pull up A in brackets. So here's A. If we hit enter, it'll just spit it out for you. But another cool thing, I mean, there's 2 more things you can really do this right off the bat, is suppose you want the inverse of this matrix. Well, just hit the inverse button, and it will compute it for you in a split second. Awesome. And then I wasn't gonna go through it right now because this video is gonna be long enough as it is, but you can multiply things. Like if you had a second matrix, you could do like, here, let's do this. If I hit second enter, it'll pull up the previous entry. Suppose I wanted to multiply this inverse by another matrix. You can do that. Right now, it's not going to make sense because I didn't put anything in B, but, you know. So it'll do matrix multiplication for you. But that's all I wanted to say about matrices. Nothing else is really, you know, everything else is pretty much standard. You'll figure it out as you're going along. If I want to clear this guy, I guess I have to go to edit. No, I don't really know how to clear it. You would have to just, you know, replace it like this. I don't know. Anyway, I'm babbling. Let's get back to what I was talking about. So I was about to talk about graphing, just plotting in general. Like, I guess I should be careful with my words. I mean, like continuous graphing, for example. So let's hit y equals. That's usually where you throw your equation in. Again, we're in functional notation, but if you're in a more advanced class like Calc 2, you'll start talking about parametric or polar coordinates. But we're not going to talk about that today. But yeah, just function notation. If it is, you know, you'd hit mode to fix this if somebody had borrowed your calculator and they put it in parametric mode or something. When you go to y equals, you'll see that it doesn't look like this. But we're in regular y equals something mode, some sort of function of x. Again, when you want a variable, you're going to hit this button. You could probably hit alpha, where's the x key? W, T, U, V, W, X. You could probably do that and get away with it. Yeah, that'll work. It knows what you mean, but it's just kind of a bad habit. This button right here is the variable button. So let's change this again. 3 times x plus like 5. And actually, I should put 3 times x plus 5, but I guess it's going to know what I mean, right? It seems to plot it with no problem. So I hit here, y equals to enter a function, and then I just hit the graph button, and it pulls this up. Now, the first thing you want to know is that you can change this window. The default window is -10 to 10 in both x and y, x and y directions, in the x-axis and the y-axis. You can hit window if you want to explicitly change that. So like, here's the minimum on the x value. I can hit enter, or excuse me, I can hit 0 there, and it'll change it. And now when I go to the graph, we started at 0, so you're not seeing much. If I go to window, we can scoot on down to like y min, y max. We can make the y max like 50. Maybe that's a better idea, right? So you can change window explicitly that way. There's a min, max, and then there's a scale. This is like the step size in the x direction. And then for y, there's a min, there's a max, there's a step size in the y direction. And I've never messed with these things down here, but it looks like they're changing automatically based on what you put there. But usually what I'll do instead is I'll hit zoom. So let's go back to our graph. This looks like trash. I hate this. Zoom standard. You can either jump on down there and hit enter, or you can just press the number 6. And it'll bring you back to a regular -10 to 10, like a basic view screen, a basic window. Sometimes there's interesting information there, and you can just hit zoom fit. Zoom fit is all the way at the bottom, so I just go up. Son of a bitch. Okay. On other calculators, sometimes it's 0. Sometimes it's the bottom one. I didn't realize those are these other things. But you can also just hit 0. So sometimes you'll hit zoom fit, and it'll give you like a more interesting graph. Like it kind of has a clue what the interesting features are that you might want to see. So zoom fit is a useful one. That's hit the zoom button and you hit 0. But if you hit zoom and hit 6, that'll give you the standard default window. And another one you might want to mess with is zoom in, zoom out. or even zoom box potentially. So like zoom box is going to ask me for the top, like, there we go. It's going to ask me for a top left corner and then a bottom right corner. I'm just holding it down. So it'll now zoom in on that particular box, you know. Or if you hate this, just hit zoom, press 6 to get a standard. You can also zoom in or out. So like if I hit 3, it'll zoom out. It's asking where you want to zoom out from right now. Like where do you want the center of the screen to be? So like let's just do that. We zoomed out a bit. Anyway, you get the idea. So this is changing the window. If you hit window now, it'll show you explicitly what it is. But this was all a little faster because I was doing the zoom button instead to zoom in and out. So let's put it back on standard. Trace. Trace will let you select like continuously these various points along the graph. So you can press, well, up didn't work, but you can press left and right, okay, to like trace along it. So before I forget, there's also format. All right. Second zoom will give you the format function. And this is just changing, like, do you want a grid or not? Do you want axes to be displayed or not? So I can like put a grid on and then go back to the graph. And now it gave me like a little grid boxes. Maybe that's helpful. I don't know. Let's go back to format. You can turn them into dots or just turn the grid off. Coordinates. You know how a moment ago I was tracing and it was showing me, like if I hit trace, it was showing me the coordinates down at the bottom, but now it's not because I turned the coordinates off. Okay? So if you go back to format, put the coordinates back on, and you'll probably be able to see, well, see if I hit graph, I'm not actually tracing the plot. So it's just like, okay, well, here's where you are. But it's printing the coordinates is my point. If I hit trace, it'll put you actually on the, off the screen, I guess. But if I hit 5, yeah, it'll put me, so let's hit 1. If I just hit 1, it says x equals 1, and it kind of zooms in on that coordinate. And now we're back. Now it's visible again. So that's what the trace button does, is it allows you to like move along your plot. And if you want to actually change features about the plot, that's under format. And then I'm not going to mess with it, but like you can turn the labels on or off. You can turn the axes on or off, but you probably don't want to do any of this stuff. It's just good to be aware of it, because if someone steals your calculator and screws with it, then you're like, oh no, how do I fix it? You know, it's either in mode or it's in format. There's some extra settings in there, you know. If you hit graph, you should be able to see a graph. If you want a sort of a better window, zoom fit is often a nice one. That's the 0 option. But if it's really just crazy and you want to go back to default, zoom standard is 10 to 10. Or you can zoom in or out, or you can make a box. All right. We talked about the window setting explicitly. We talked about this cool zoom feature. We talked about settings of graphs, which is under format. We talked about tracing, which is really just highlighting a single point on your plot. If you just hit the graph button, it just shows you the graph, right? Now there's calc. This calc function also relates to your graph. If we do second trace or second calc, these are operations that you can do to your graph, to your continuous graph that you have there. If you hit value, I can enter a number like 2, and it'll just tell me 2 goes to 11. I guess we can't see that because 11 is bigger than 10. It's like right here. Okay? Let's try it again. If I hit 1, it just goes there. So it looks like just hitting 1 on the graph will give you the value of x equals 1. But let's do it again under here. Calc, value. Let's enter -1. And yeah, it's giving me that value. Another one you might want, what if you want the zeros? What if you want the y-intercepts of your function? It's under 0 here. So we could hit 2, or we could just go down and hit enter. And now it's asking, what's a left bound? It's going to do this numerically for you, but it needs to know, like, what range are you even talking about? You want the zeros between what to what. So I'm going to have to go, I'm going to arrow over to the left of this intersection that I can see. There's a root right there. You know, I can see there's a 0 right there. So we're going to put a left bound somewhere to the left. Like, you could even punch in -2. So I'll hit enter. And then if I enter like 1, say, that'll be a right bound. And now it's saying, what's your guess? And you can just hit enter right now. It can be a bad guess. It'll do a fine job of finding it. But the reason there's a guess is that it's probably going to find you the root that's closest to your guess. So like if you had multiple roots and you happen to include them both in this range, I'm not sure that it would give you all of the roots. It's probably going to give you the one nearest to your guess. Anyway, it doesn't matter. We hit enter usually, and there's your 0. It's giving us -1.666 for a root for this function. So that's why calc is super helpful. Second calc button will, we could find a minimum. This line doesn't have a minimum or a maximum, but potentially if we had like a parabola or something, we could look at that if you want. X squared, right? If I want to turn off a graph, I can hit left and see how the equal sign is blinking. You hit enter, and now it's off. It's not going to plot that straight line anymore because I turned it off. So when I hit graph, it's just plotting this parabola. And now I can go to calc and I can say, hey, find me the minimum. And it's like, again, it wants to know what's your left and right hand bounds. I'm going to say, can you find me a minimum between like here and here? And what's your guess? I don't know. Anyway, here's our minimum. That's a fluke. This is clearly a rounding error. Number times 10 to the -6, that's 0. Again, this is also 0 over here. So I don't know why it's doing that, but it's being very precise, and it doesn't realize that this number is 0. So you would have to recognize that that's 0, 0, not 0.00000002414. Anyway, let's get rid of this parabola. Let's get back to our line. If you want to turn it back on, you do that, right? I guess while we're still talking about basic plots, there's another thing you can do here, and that's changing the style of the line. TI-83 was a little simpler. This one's got like colors and stuff. But yeah, if you like arrow on over to, so here I'm able to turn it on or off. If I go left to here, I'm able to change the style that the line is printed in. So if I enter, this freaking thing has colors, which is crazy to me. But yeah, you can change the style. So I could change it to like a thicker line. I could change it to a dotted line. Oops, let's hit enter, enter. Now when I hit graph, instead of being a line, it's like a dotted line. Hey, Stucky. So let's change it to something else. I don't know. Let's do like a thicker line just for, well, theoretically that's thicker, right? And then let's say we, oops, don't do that. Let's do this one, right? Looks like it's going to fill in everything above the line, and that's what it did. So if you wanted to like shade in above, or like maybe you have multiple lines and you want to shade a region or something. Honestly, I've never used this feature, but you could. It's there. Let's get rid of this. Oh, it didn't fix it. Oh, it did fix it. There we go. So 3x plus 5. What else is in my list of things to talk about? So we did y equals. If you hit graph, it graphs your thing. We basically just talked about everything that relates to graphs, like continuous plots of this function that you put in, right? Maybe we should do one more example. What if I had like 2x minus 8, okay? This is a second function. Hit graph. Great, right? Two lines, two functions. So here's why I'm bringing this up. If you hit calc right now, and you're like, I want the intersection between them. It's going to ask you, it's pretty handy. It knows what it's going to guess that your first y equals is the first curve, right? So you just say, yup, that's it. Second y equals is second curve, yup. Where's the intersection? Where do you want me to start looking for an intersection? I guess here. And I'm not surprised that it just failed, right? And the reason is it can't see the intersection. Like, it's doing this numerically, and for some reason it's just like nothing exists outside this window. So if you're in this situation, you need to be able to see the intersection before, if you're using this graph button to try and find the intersection, you're going to go second calc intersect. It's not going to work. You need to like zoom out would be fine. It looks like I have a chance of finding it now, right? It looks like there might be an intersection right there. Let's try it. 5. So first curve, second curve, take a guess. I'm too lazy to move it. Sure. And there, it found it. Okay, so negative 13, negative 34. It is working. I believe that's just about everything I wanted to say about y equals and everything that follows from that. So like, you throw some stuff in y equals, you can graph them. You can trace if you wanted to go point by point. But probably most useful thing is calc to get you like zeros or potentially intersections. But keep in mind that if you're finding an intersection, you need to zoom out. Like, it needs to be able to see it, or else it's going to have a hard time numerically computing that for you. Now, I am not done. The one other thing that I wanted, well, two more things I want to talk about with plotting, but the one other thing immediately I want to talk about is table. If I just hit second table right now, there's already a table of values. So like, we had y equals, and we've got these functions that we put in. But if you go to second and hit the table button, it's showing you those points. So like, if we scoot on up to negative 13, you'll see our intersection. That's where the two y values are equal, right? So let's talk about table real quick. I can't actually change anything right now. If I hit like 5, it's ignoring me, right? If I hit table set, that's like the settings for the table. That's the settings button for table. So let's go to second window or second table set. And I can hit 0 now, and it'll be like, oh, okay, you want to start at 0. And it moved me back to 0, like the default, right? If I change the delta to like 2, now when I look at table, it's going to be printing only even numbers. So I started at 0, and it's giving me +2, -2, etc. So multiples of 2 for inputs for the independent variable. And the only other thing you're really going to do with table set is you might change this to ask. So if I go to the independent variable, it's x. If I hit enter here to change it from auto to ask, instead of generating anything, it just leaves it blank, and you yourself can just punch in some numbers that you're interested in seeing, So sometimes this is useful. Graph, of course, is the same as it always was. So table is sort of like a separate feature. Tables for like discrete information, whole number information. Well, I don't mean literally integers, but like basically you can punch in, or you could even make the delta probably as small as you want, right? Let's put this back on auto and start at 0 and go back to the table, and it gives me much more fine information if you want that. So it's a bit like a table. It's a bit like you're on trace and you're moving along, right? Instead of doing this and being like, oh man, I'm missing a bunch of points, you can just go to table. You can, again, one feature you might use is you'll wish that you could enter these x values yourself. What you got to do is go to table set and change the independent variable to ask, if that's what you want to do. And now you'll be able to go to table, and you'll be able to just enter stuff. I'm surprised that it didn't clear that for me, but that's okay. That's good. So one last thing I want to say. Let's see. I talked about table set. I talked about format, which you're never going to use, but if somebody, maybe you want to put a grid on the screen, or maybe somebody messed with it and you want to put it back to normal. So format is like the settings button for graphing. I talked about zoom. The most common ones, I think, are zoom box, zoom standard to get back to the -10 to 10. Zoom fit is one I use a lot. And then zooming in and out. Oops, zoom in, out, 2, 2, 3, maybe. I don't use, honestly, I always just use zoom fit. That's the 0 option. Or I use zoom standard. That's 6. Window. If you want to set this window explicitly, you can do that here under the window button. Trace. I don't think I ever really use trace very often, but it's there. You can if you hit down, it moves you on to the other, to your second or your third or your fourth, whatever's in y equals. So you can move up or down to move to the separate functions. What else I got? Trace, we're talking about here. Calc 0, calc value. Oops, sorry. Hit the calc button. We talked about that already. And if you've got multiple functions, you can try to find their intersection, but as I already said, you want to make sure that the intersection is actually in the window. Like here, I would have to zoom out before it would work. But we already did that. So yeah, you can just hit zoom, intersect, enter, enter, enter. It should give you, yeah, good idea. So yeah, that's everything. There's one more thing I want to talk about. Actually, wait a minute. Plotting a second line, intersecting, zooming out, yada, yada, yada. There's one more thing I want to talk about, and that's stat plot. Okay? So let me, let's see, what we got in the stat thing? Oh, it's empty. Good. In fact, let's just clear everything. Let me start over. So yeah, we had y equals, right? And let me well, we'll leave this blank for now. We don't need anything there. But stat plot, right now everything's off. What stat plot does, here's kind of an image of what it's going to do. It's good for scatter plots. Like it's going to plot a bunch of points in the graph, but those points are coming from the lists. So like right now, if I try to turn this on, it's like, okay, sure, now hit graph, and it's going to be like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what you want. And the reason is I don't have any lists. So let's start over here. Remember, you can hit second list, and these are the names that you can refer to. So like if I just hit enter, it's like, hey, there is no list 1. Error. If I go hit stat, I can edit these lists. So let's go ahead and throw some numbers in here. Actually, I'm about to plot these, list 1 and list 2. So let me pretend these are x values, okay? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I'll come back to this in a sec. But now if I hit second enter, it'll pull up the previous thing that I had entered, which is L1. Now it's fine, right? There is a list there. It doesn't give me an error anymore. But stat plot is still going to give me an error, so it's on, right? It says it's on. Let's go to graph. What's it going to do? It's going to say, bro, that's not a function. I don't know what you want from me. I'm asking for it to plot basically list 1 versus list 2. What I mean is list 1 is the, here, let's hit enter. Because you can change these lists if you want to. But it's treating list 1 as the x values and list 2 as the y values. And it's giving me an error because it has no y values, right? I never entered any. So that's why this is happening. So let's go to stat, go to edit, and let's actually put something in here. Now, I don't want to put just random stuff because remember our window is -10 to 10 in both the x and y directions. So I don't want to put like 5,000 in here because you won't be able to see it. So let's do just some small like random data. Oops, I must have, nice work. Let's try that again. -2. Huh. All right, sorry, I can't hit negative. Let's just do it the way the calculator wants it. -2. Oh, I hit minus. That's why. Yeah, there's a difference between -2 and -2. You can't just hit -2. Although I'll bet you could do this. like that. You could do 0 minus 3. That'll probably work. Anyway, you get the idea. I wonder what it'll do if the lists are not the same length. Yep, it gripes. Dimension mismatch. It's trying to tell you explicitly those are not the same size list. So let's go to stat. Oops, let's get out of here. Let's go to stat again and make sure that my second list is actually the same length. I don't know, let's put a 1 there. And now stat plot is working. So that's how you plot individual points if you have a couple lists. Again, that's stat plot to change the that second y equals will send you to stat plot, and that's for plotting the lists that you have. We talked about this at the very beginning. You know, you enter a list and you can hit 1 var stats. And with the TI-84, it looks like it actually asks you for a list. I'm used to TI-83. It'll just assume that you want list 1 if you don't say anything. But yeah, so that's cool for getting like some basic statistics like the variance, or the standard deviation, I mean, and the sum and the mean, the median, etc. But yeah, if you go to stat plot, you can change the behavior of the plot. Like if you wanted to connect the dots, you could highlight this guy. You know, this is some more statistics stuff, just different, like a box plot. We don't have to talk about those. You could change the marking right here if you want to. Apparently you can change the color. That's also new to me. But the other thing you might want to know is that, so we've got stat plot here, right? If I go to y equals and I throw a function in there, it'll plot both. Notice you can just arrow over to the equal sign and hit enter to turn it off if you want to remove it from your plot. You can do the same thing for a stat plot. See, it's highlighted up here now because we turned it on. You could turn it off here, and so they'll go away. See, it's off now. So you could also turn it on like here. You can hit enter, turn it on, and I will bet you that it's back on again. If I go to y equals, it turned itself on. That, ladies and gents, can't believe this video is so long, but that was all I wanted to tell you about the fundamentals of using a TI-84. The rest of the stuff you'll probably figure out on your own. But that's everything that I know that is ingrained in me. The rest of the stuff is usually pretty self-explanatory. So like, you know how sometimes you have you want to store a number, like on a standard scientific calculator, often there's like a memory button where you can store stuff, like you have some big computation and you want to store it for later. Or maybe you'll probably get used to using parentheses to make sure that you didn't, 3 divided by 2 plus 5 should be what, right? It's going to group these first, so it's never going to make a mistake, but maybe you meant this kind of thing. So a lot of people, well, you want to get used to using parentheses to be explicit about what you mean, of course. Yeah, another thing is memory. It has like 26 memory locations, all just these letters. So like if I hit A now, which is the third option, this alpha lock button, well, not alpha lock, but the alpha button. If you hit alpha and you hit a letter, it'll probably give you an error if it's empty. Oh, give me 0. Okay, so most of them are defined as 0 to begin with. But because I hit the store button, so say I took pi and I store it in like B, right? So now if I want to use this number, I can just go B, and it's accessing that location, that B variable that you stored. I don't remember the difference between, there it is. I guess it fills it. So the recall button looks like it fills it like on the fly, like inline in a sense. You see what it just did? Um, it's the same as just doing B, the recall button. Um, recall is the same as just using a letter, but it does it in line. So that could be useful to you, I guess. So like say I wanted e to the pi. We can just put a b here. That'll work. But if you want to see what you're doing, like if you want to see it, you can do e to the recall. Oh boy. Looks like I've broken everything. Nope, it worked, it worked. Yep. I don't know. That seems to be all that recall does. I don't remember ever using that. And you got your e there. That's what the EE is. I can do 2e. What? 2e5 is what I thought I would get, but oh, sorry. I didn't hit the button. Let's try that again. 2e. There we go. So if I do 2e2, it should be times 10 to the power 2, right? So it should give me like 200. So there's an e there, second e, if you want to use scientific notation. And again, I mentioned it at the beginning, but if you hit mode, you can change it to actually displaying everything in scientific notation. But that should be everything. That's I mean, there's more stuff obviously that the calculator can do. Like some of them, yep, a lot of them come with the TI-84s come with finance, some sort of finance apps. I've never used these, but oh yeah, I forgot to mention math. What's test do? Test I've like never used. I've used test when if you're like doing some programming, test can come in handy. So the TI-83s were always awesome because you could like write programs. You just hit new and you fidget with that, but that's sort of a much more advanced stuff. So when you do have a program, it'll show up here and you can execute them or you can edit them or you can create a new one. But otherwise, program shows up in this list, I believe. Math might be useful to you. So like here's NPR. Like suppose you wanted 5, choose 2. You do 5, you hit the math button, and you jump on over to probability. And then you can just hit the number 2 to pull up NPR, or you can hit the number 3 to get NCR. And this is unique to the TI-84, the fact that it just changed the way this looked. But yeah, suppose I wanted 5, choose 2. I do 5, NCR, 2, and it should give you an answer. So math is another button you're definitely going to use. Math probability, maybe math num for like absolute values. Maybe a bit of this. There's a cube root in there you can see. But you could also just do, of course, you could do like 8 raised, and then in parentheses put 1/3. That'll give you the cubed root of that first number. So that's probably the way most people would do it. But you could also just go math cubed root and then put an 8 in there. And I think that's it. So good luck with your math class, ladies and germs. Have a great day. Thank you for tuning in. I'm going to leave this up as a highlight for any of you dorks out there who are scared of your calculator. Maybe it's the first time you've been using TI-83. Can't think of anything else. So that is it. Have a good one.